Have you ever celebrated Halloween a little too much? This is the story of George, a 13-year-old boy whose fascination with ghosts and the occult turned one Halloween night into something he would never forget. It was October 31st, 2011. George had spent an entire week preparing his costume, a scary clown with a makeshift baton. He'd checked every detail countless times and couldn't wait to show it off. That evening, he joined his friends for trick-or-treating, going door to door through their neighborhood. By 8 p.m., their baskets overflowed with chocolates, and the boys gathered at the community park to divide their candy. But George wasn't satisfied. He wanted more. Ignoring his friends' protests, he convinced one of them to join him in the neighboring suburb. Just one last round of trick-or-treat. After an hour, they had even more candy. George's friend then suggested a quiet spot to share their loot. They began walking down darker streets, houses thinning out, the laughter of the town fading behind them. The air turned colder. "Almost there," his friend said. But when they stopped, in an open, empty field, George realized how silent everything had become. He turned to speak to his friend, and froze. He was gone. Calling his name brought no answer. Then, through the faint moonlight, George saw someone standing near a tree. Same height, same build. But the figure was wearing the exact same clown costume George had on. Same mask, same baton. Confused, he walked closer. "Hey, have you seen my friend?" he asked nervously. The figure didn't respond. It only tilted its head slightly, then bent down, smiling eerily. In a low whisper, it said, "I'm your friend. Did you enjoy trick-or-treating with me?" George's heart stopped. His breath caught in his throat. The voice was his own. He dropped his baton and candy, running as fast as he could, the sound of footsteps matching his every move. Through the trees, he could see the figure darting beside him, and each time he blinked, it disappeared, only to reappear again. Finally, he reached a nearby house and frantically knocked on the door. A family opened up, startled, and after hearing his story, drove him home safely. That night, George couldn't sleep. From his window, he swore he saw the same clown standing outside, waving at him. Terrified, he ran to his parents' room and stayed there till morning, waking up screaming from nightmares of the clown's grin. The next day, George called all his friends, asking who went with him to the suburb. But no one did. Not one of them remembered going. Even the friend who was dressed as Batman said he'd gone straight home after trick-or-treating. George was confused, terrified. Until that evening, when news broke. A man dressed as a clown had been killed in a car accident, right near the same field George had run from. That was the moment George realized the horrifying truth. The friend who walked with him that night wasn't human. It was something else, something pretending to be him. Since that Halloween night, George never celebrated again. He gave up his obsession with ghosts and dark arts. But one question still haunts him. Why was the spirit impersonating him? It happened on Halloween night of 2007, when 5 friends decided to celebrate the spooky night in a different way. No costumes, no trick-or-treating, no candy. This year, they wanted something darker. For weeks, they'd planned the perfect Halloween adventure. Their idea: spend the night partying inside an abandoned house on the outskirts of town, a house infamous for its haunted history. Each of them had a role. 3 brought food, drinks, and a Ouija board. The other 2 carried a portable speaker and a camcorder to record their wild night. They thought it would be fun, a mix of music, games, and a little ghost hunting. By 6 p.m. they arrived. The house stood cold and silent, its windows broken, its walls covered in vines. It was said that two foreigners were brutally murdered there in the late 1980s, and that their restless spirits still roamed the halls. But the friends didn't care. They laughed, turned up the music, and poured their drinks. The camera recorded everything, their jokes, their games, and the uneasy silence that sometimes crept between the noise. Around 9 p.m., one of them, Jeremy, stopped dancing. He pointed toward a cracked window. "I just saw someone looking at us." The others laughed it off, teasing him for being drunk. But moments later, a loud thud echoed from the floor below. The music stopped. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Then, with trembling flashlights, they crept downstairs. Every step creaked under their feet. Finally, they found the source of the noise. A small wooden plank had fallen off a table. A mouse darted across the floor. They all laughed nervously, relief flooding back. But when they returned upstairs, their laughter died. The Ouija board, which had been packed inside a bag, now lay open on the floor, the planchette pointing towards the door. They froze. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Then one of them nervously joked it off. And soon, the group tried to forget what they'd seen, returning to their drinks. But the uneasy feeling never left. Moments later, they heard the sound of running footsteps, this time outside. They rushed to the window and saw it, a figure in ragged clothes sprinting across the field towards the wall. And then, it vanished. At that exact moment, another loud thud echoed from inside the house. That was enough. Panicked, the boys grabbed the camera and bolted into the night. The road back to town was pitch black, and as they ran, they could hear footsteps behind them, sometimes beside them, sometimes right behind their backs. Each time they turned, there was nothing there. They didn't stop running until they saw the streetlights of town again. That night, none of them slept. No one spoke a word. The next morning, they gathered to watch the footage on the camcorder. But everything, every single clip, had been wiped clean, except one. The last clip showed the Ouija board moving on its own, spelling the word out. After that night, the friends drifted apart. They never spoke about the incident again. The house still stands there today, silent and broken, a reminder of the night when curiosity crossed the line and something answered.